to a lot of work if we're gone and the two people who replace us are with the other two people. I mean, if you're going to be writing ordinance.
It's not a lot of work to put a resolution together.
Okay.
It really isn't.
Okay, all right,
Okay. We've done it before.
then I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
I'm not arguing.
Okay.
My only comment is I agree with it kind of about the thatch issue. But as far as the,
I mean,
I've already expressed my opinion as far as the.
I think that we should ask Mark Gehring if there is some way to be able to identify that. And I don't even care if we facilitate it, because he was talking about hiring a company anyway to outsource
Yes.
that for our residents.
Yes.
I'm okay with doing that, as long as they pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just say, they go out, Mark says, or whoever says, your problem is thatch, call these people. They'll take care of it for you. They get the bill.
Just, if, I would agree with you if you could get Mark to come in here and say that the only reason we have stormwater drainage issues in Punta Gorda is thatch.
Nobody's
No, I'm not
saying that.
saying that.
Nobody's saying
Nobody's
that.
saying
No,
that.
it's
Okay.
just that there are some, if I understood him correctly, that is definitely the problem.
That is correct.
And he can identify that.
How difficult would it be to establish a thatch mowing ordinance like the lot mowing ordinance, where, mandatory ordinance, where they have the opportunity to opt out, but otherwise the city takes care of it and charges for it?
Well, it's easy to do the lot mowing, there's nothing on the lots. To do a thatching, somebody's
Right.
house.
What happens when the swale is wet and you can't do the thatch?
Actually, yeah, at a certain point, the only way to address the thatch issue is to remove the turf completely.
Right.
Regrade and put new sod down.
So Mark is either ignoring us, or he's not in the
He's like,
corner.
no more of that.
We've already heard from the University of Florida.
I know.
And we know the issue.
We know. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only thing I can think of too is maybe some kind of pilot program.
And I mean-
Maybe
I mean, I'm
maybe
just
in those
saying.
two streets that we know it's an issue, we could try to come up with some kind of pilot program to address the thatch.
Well, we tried this before, and we came back to the fact that we wanted to establish a stormwater utility and treat everybody out there and manage it ourselves.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of
It is a
money.
lot.
500, I mean, I know we're not using the whole 500,000, but those 186 homes are thatch problems, right? Or no?
I don't know.
Probably about 50% of it is thatch problem.
Okay,
So there's more
Mark
than
Gehring,
just.
Public Works.
right.
Okay, so if I recall, and Mark's here, so if I'm off, just correct me, but we're looking at about $1,100-$1,200 if we have an outside contractor do the thatching per property, is that correct?
We have estimated the cost to be around $1,200 to do it internally, on a smaller scale than what we've been doing.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get a better price than that when it goes out for contract.
I can tell you that if you go out and you just do it yourself, you're looking at $100. However, you can't get people to do it.
I don't think we've really educated the people. We haven't really gone,
It's a cultural issue.
it is a cultural issue.
And you only
And the guy
solve
that has
when
the
you have
thatch
to
doesn't
reach
have the water in his front yard most of the time,
is
correct? So that's
Yeah, the person that suffers is two or
down
three
the
lots
street.
down.
Yeah,
That's the person that's suffering from the purpose versus the person that you need to do the thatching. And it's gonna be hard for somebody, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. It's gonna be hard for somebody to say, well, that's 3 lots down, that's not my problem. Even though they're the ones that's got the culvert that goes from their lot into the canal, and they're the low spot on the block, that's still 3 lots down.
But if
You know,
we-
that's 240 feet down, so why is that my problem?
we could still show the people that have the thatch that they have it. We could still substantiate it. So
If it was a thatching ordinance that you had to
I think we should try some kind of pilot program. Maybe we don't just go out there with a hardcore ordinance, but we maybe do some trials. I don't know.
Well, certainly if there's one area that's worse off than others with this problem, we can.
Is there one area that's worse off?
No, we see it across the city, mainly in the three PGI,
Overlays, yeah.
BSM, and
And
BS.
because of the type of
The
predominant sod that
the
you
grass,
It's
yeah.
the turf.
you know, if we were to really want to eliminate a lot of that thatching problem, we would write an ordinance that would ban a particular type of sod in the future, so that we wouldn't have the problem in the first place. It's, see, Keith is gone, so Keith Tolles put this particular sod on my house, but I built it. We love the house, okay? It's beautiful looking sod from, you know, a distance and so forth, but it turns out it has this problem that a lot of people don't just realize, because you don't think about that.
Right. Swales are the perfect environment to create thatch. They're moist, they're nutrient rich.
Maybe we need to do some more outreach with the homeowners association and the Facebook question
that's-
and get some more input on this.
Yeah, we could have a community meeting and see what they think. What do you think about, what do you think would be a solution? If we wanted them to pay for it, how, I mean, could we outsource it and just give them, if you go, because they call you, right? And they say, I have
They
standing
call me
water.
quite a bit, yes.
And they call their council members. too.
Right, I
Yes.
know, yeah.
Well, if I could go back a little bit, to the pilot program, we've already determined that the only fix for the problem areas is to take the sod completely up and put it back down. We're preparing our package to send to procurement now to go out for October for this $500,000 project. And what we've determined that we're going to do is send a public works inspector with a level out to the problem areas that we captured on our videos. And he's going to determine with paint marks of where the areas need to be regraded, where the sod needs to be taken up. Taking that same approach, whether we paid for that through a fund, whether we paid for that through an assessment to the homeowner, or just simply put that burden on the homeowner, there is going to be paint marks in his yard, and we're going to know exactly where the problem areas are.
When a house receives a building permit, isn't there a requirement that the swale be of a certain grade?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And just like when it receives a building permit, there's a minimum number of plants for its landscape plan, and they're required to maintain that. So if they're required to have, let's say, 10 bushes and 3 of them die, they're in violation of our code if they don't replace those 3. So maybe if they don't maintain the grade of the swale that was authorized at the time of construction, that would be in violation of maintaining the property in the condition that it was approved.
In our surveys going back, a year and a half ago, we found one community who has that, pointed that out, that they would put that burden on the homeowner because that is required through their code, but they never have enforced it. So yes, we could. The homes were put in properly when they were constructed, but they're no longer there.
So what if you have those paint marks there and you say to the homeowner, this needs to be replaced, here's a company that'll do it for you?
Or homeowners.
Homeowners,
Mhm.
no, well, that's what I mean, but you're gonna be painting it all.
I think we would still need some kind of ordinance or code, have to be some kind of code
If-
process to go along with it to make sure they do it.
Sure,
If I could add, if we wanted to take that sort of approach, perhaps we hire a contractor under the city's guidance and assistance, just like we do for dredging or people replacing their sidewalks or driveways when we do sidewalk work. Give them the benefit of having this contractor who already knows our process very well. They don't have to go out and negotiate a price. We have a unit rate, and they know exactly what they're going to pay. And they have the option, if they happen to know a contractor or want to get involved, to see if there's a better price for them. But we could have that in place for them, where okay, you've got 86 feet, your fee will be this many dollars.
I like it.
I'm gonna withdraw my nod and my I don't think we need to adopt a separate ordinance. We already have, the ordinances that require that you maintain the property in accordance with code, unless the code changed in some fashion from the time it was originally constructed, in which case it would be grandfathered to some extent. So as Mark points out, it's a matter of enforcement. We would need to go out, city council would have to direct that resources should be allocated to have staff go out and take measurements. And if the measurements show that the swale is no longer being maintained with the slope that it was permitted, we would issue a notice of violation, give them an opportunity to come in compliance, maybe suggest who can do it and bring them into compliance, and only if they fail to come into compliance, then the code enforcement board could issue a fine or otherwise mandate some action.
Gary?
When we're talking about the thatching, we're still only talking about maybe half of the problem.
Right.
If we're looking at 186 properties and 90 of them are out of compliance because of thatching, we're asking those people to spend basically $100,000 to correct that problem, which is 20% of what we're advocating to the budget. The question is what does it cost to repair those other halves, and how? And
Well, that's a true stormwater issue.
Yeah.
yeah, and I understand, that's a true stormwater issue, so my point being is, it still is probably gonna be simpler to actually have it happen, and have it happen seamlessly if we try to include it all, even though I think that there's a consensus here in the five that it's kind of offensive.
But replacing the sod is a short-term solution, really. I mean, if we're gonna go in there, we're gonna regrade, or whoever is gonna regrade, and then put the sod down. Is the grading alone gonna make sure this doesn't happen again? No, because the thatch can still grow back again. So then 15 years, we're back in the guy's yard, and that's the part where I have the problem, Nancy.
But here's the issue. Mark is talking about that the swale has been neglected, and it's gotten to the point that you can't really just dethatch it. You have to pull the sod up and then dethatch it. If you get it before the heck, I didn't have the problem yet, and I just went to go see what it took to detach it. It really wasn't that big a deal, because I wasn't sinking down a foot when I stepped on my grass. I was sinking down about 4 inches. Maybe not even that, but, it was cushy, but you could still feel the ground underneath my
Well, we have some
grass.
people
So it
like,
wasn't a big
yeah,
deal.
we have other people like that too, but without some enforcement of this, we're just gonna, keep going. Nancy?
Perpetuate it.
The grade actually doesn't change, it's the thatch that causes the issue, and when you pull the sod up, then it interrupts the grade, so you have to go back. It's, and as we've talked about it, it's the cultural issue, so it's gonna be very hard, because people depend on us now, and they think that it's a service that we provide. So it's going to be a big departure. But
Right.
if there's gonna be a fee, then it could be the stormwater is doing an education to say, we can lower the fee if,
Maybe
I still think we should try to do some enforcement on those particular areas. I would like to see that happen.
Well, I'm not gonna argue if you're gonna ask somebody to take care of their own property.
Right.
So, there you go.
I don't know where we're going.
Well, I found the discussion very interesting, and maybe Mark doesn't have an answer for this. But, if there's a requirement to maintain the slope that was originally approved, was that slope with sod or slope without sod? And if the slope isn't maintained because of the thatching and the failure to maintain the thatching, would that actually constitute a failure to maintain the slope? I don't know the answer to that question.
that's a good point.
Well, when they apply for their CO at time of completion, the elevation is measured on top of their sod. The objective is that when we put that level down, the flow line be at an elevation that we've established for them.
So then, if the sod is not maintained so as to avoid the problem of thatching that might change the slope, then we could have an enforcement action against the person who failed to maintain the grade as a result of failing to maintain the thatching.
Yes.
So what if we just started a pilot program where we notify, we do a notification, we're gonna do the assessment, we do the notification, and then we start an education behind that. Instead of just, you know, stamping them with a hardcore code violation, we say, okay, look, this is the problem, this is the issue, and we do some education and kind of in a more lenient fashion, just for the time being, until we can really figure out what we want to do.
Well, we kind of did that when we first adopted our water shortage ordinances with the changing
With
of
the days, yeah.
Yeah, where you notify everybody with a sort of a warning notice, and then
Right.
that starts the educational process.
Right.
And then it's only after somebody's received a warning notice and not has addressed the problem, then you take it to the next step. And the ordinance, I mean, that's a policy determination that you just, I don't think you need to do anything to an
Anything
ordinance.
else,
Yeah.
but notify them with a letter, with the findings, city staff has come out and found that this is out of compliance with the technical terms that you
Right,
used.
right. And this is how you come into compliance.
Right,
you
and this
fail.
is how you come into compliance, and
And
I
you're-
think we should
yeah.
try it.
So the first ones we would do would be the first 100 thatching
ones
issues
that
that
have
we
the-
know right now.
The ones that need the sod, and the ones that clearly are out of compliance with the slope in the, from the CO.
I'm not understanding what we're being asked to do there. We're going to go out and determine those. We have a good idea where they are. Now we have to identify the exact extents. Are we fixing that situation?
No,
Or sending them
we're
just a
sending them
letter?
Sending them a letter.
So who are we fixing? Where are we spending our money, and what are we going to do in the
You're gonna
meantime?
go take your level.
The non-thatching problem.
Yep, the non-thatch.
Non-thatching problems.
Are we on board with that?
I think it's worth a try myself.
Well, if you're gonna go out and mark them, just drop a letter off while you're there. This is your problem.
I'd like to see us have some type of a coordinated effort
Effort.
here that we could actually let people know that we're going to start this program, and so that it's really not something we're just doing a knee-jerk kind of, but really put some thought behind it, so that it's really publicized and people understand, and that this is what we are going to do.
If they've watched any of
If-
these meetings, they know how many hours we've talked about
That
this.
is correct, but not everybody does, and so, and not everybody, you know, no matter how much we would like it.
Well, what if we did, what about doing the coordinated effort, like he said, of going to the point of getting a contractor?
But I mean, put together the plan, the program, and say, we're going to start this on, and pick a date,
But to Mark's point, start what? We're gonna go in there and do it?
No. We are going to, what I'm hearing is that you want us to put together a program, notify those property owners,
A notification program,
a notification.
thatch notification
Here you
program,
have a thatch issue,
which is
and-
leading to,
and we would like you to take
Standing
care of
water.
it within a certain amount of time frame. This is a courtesy letter,
yep,
just like we do with code. We give them some courtesy notices. And then, if they don't take care of it, I presume you want us to deal with code?
and maybe we could offer, you know, city phone number on there, if you would like help on how to rectify this problem, we have resources for you. But if not, I mean, maybe they have a lawn guy and they just call the person up and they take care of it. I could see some people that don't even have any idea that they have a problem doing that. So, I like that idea, Kim.
What, just like the city does with the backflow preventers. You know, every year you have to have your on a commercial building, it needs to be checked. And they send you a letter, and they have a whole list of people who do that.
Yep.
And you have, by a certain date, to get it done.
Is that what you want us to do?
I think it's worth a try.
I think that's a reasonable way to go about it.
Just have a question for Mark. So, Mark, if we solve the thatch issue, is the stormwater drainage issue solved?
No.
No.
So what do we do?
In the aisles, BSI, BSM, those problems are 50% the Floritam sod that is built up at thatch level. We have the folks that have a pipe, the pipe end may be crushed. A lot of times you'll see sedimentation just around the pipes, and it just requires a shovel or a few scoops and a piece of sod to be thrown back down. That's not considered a thatch problem, it's the soil's built up there. So,
How do we deal with that portion of the problem?
Well, we either use what I'm looking at is 3 to 2 a fee.
And he's coming up with a program to start next year with the 500,000 that we've already allocated to start addressing.
And we've got other areas of the city that have drainage issues that have nothing to do with thatch.
Right.
Nothing to do with thatch.
Or dirt and pipes or anything.
You know, you've got the historic east side, the historic west side, the downtown. You got all kinds of areas that have nothing to do with thatch.
And maybe what we could do too is, when we give them this notification letter, Nancy, I don't know, you probably have more connections than I do because of all your certifications and things, is have some kind of open forum with the IFAS people, have a thatch, have the experts come, explain to the people why this is happening, how it's happening, and I don't think that could hurt.
No, we can get the extension, Ralph Mitchell and
Maybe
team involved.
once a month or something, they could have a meeting on it to educate the homeowners. So I like the thatch notification. Are we okay with that?
Yeah. Sure.
So
Okay.
we've got a twofold process. We're going to do the thatch notification. We're also going to bring to you eventually a resolution to establish a fee. We'll see if that gets adopted.
And he's gonna start on the plan with most of the non-thatch issues to be implemented next fiscal year.
We're going out for a proposal for a contractor to help us, yes.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, that was short. Okay, we're gonna have to take just a few minutes here, 12:25. Let's just take 5 minutes to 12:30. We are back in session. We have no unfinished business. We do have new business, presentation of strategic communications positioning. Howard.
The topic of strategic branding, strategic communications, positioning is not new. We first presented this to City Council back in 2009, and it has been revisited at various times over the years without any definitive action. More recently, we raised it again in 2013, still without any closure. In March, a group of volunteers from One Community, One Message presented council with 4 options to pursue, the result of which council asked for more information as to message, content, and specific target audiences, as well as benefits to be realized. In July, you heard today that the city, in a partnership with the Visitors Bureau, held a 2-day seminar attended by 25 representatives of business, real estate, hospitality, boating, volunteer, and the arts community to gauge interest and support for the city to develop a citywide branding program, the results of which are going to be presented today by Dave DiMaggio, the president of Aqua Marketing and Communications, whose firm also works with the Visitors Bureau. The group unanimously concluded that it was the responsibility of the city to manage our story, rather than let external forces define how we are viewed by both current and potential residents, businesses, and visitors. The topic is also very timely because we are putting together our strategic plan and our budget, of which marketing, which we are now going to call strategic communications positioning, is one of the 5 priorities. So, in summary, come on up, Dave. We believe that investing in a community brand is a logical next step in securing the future of Punta Gorda and our distinct quality of life. So, with that,
Okay, well, thank you, Howard. Madam Mayor and members of council, not mayors of council, right? Good afternoon. Tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I do want to give you a report on the July 13th and 14th meeting and how that went. You heard a lot of good comments earlier today, so we'll give you the details on that. Do want to give you a discussion on community branding and what that is and how you might benefit from that, but also give you recommended next steps. So in regard to the meeting on the 13th and 14th, as Howard mentioned, there are 25 area leaders, and they were really, as Bruce had mentioned, really from all walks of the community. So it was a very diverse group, really an outgrowth of OCOM. You know, Patty had mentioned that earlier. Great work by OCOM, and I think very much a next step. By process and content, however, it was very much an internal look at the city's position and definition. On day one, this was our curriculum. We looked at really the relationships of the various sectors of the community and how they interrelate with one another. We talked about how brands and messages are developed, and we discussed Punta Gorda's attributes. We considered who the targets and audiences might be for the messages for Punta Gorda, and we considered who might counter our efforts, or what might counter our efforts. We actually went away with some homework that evening. We came back the next morning. Folks were supposed to give us an answer to, attempt to answer Punta Gorda is. And so the members of the group did that, or attempted to do that. But then we entered into some pretty lively discussion and discussing the next steps for the city and what the city might consider. To give you some more detail, some of the questions that we asked ourselves during those 2 days is really, who are we? How are we viewed by those who might consider the city? Who considers the city? Will they continue to do so? And if so, why? Do we know how to describe ourselves? And should the city actively try to control its image? And then we also reviewed the survey responses. If you remember, you actually were given a survey prior to that meeting, and the people in our meeting also answered those. I thought it might be interesting for you to take a look at some of those responses. Some of the questions, we'll give you all the questions and the answers, some of the summaries of the questions and answers. In general, how would you describe Punta Gorda? We heard words like waterfront, quaint, small town ambiance, old Florida, safe, peaceful, affordable. We asked the question, how would you describe Punta Gorda as a tourist destination? We heard it has potential, peaceful, relaxing, great for friends and family who are visitors. The attributes for tourism are the waterfront and water activities, events, Fisherman's Village. It's a quiet, friendly, safe, affordable community, old Florida charm. What might make it better for tourism? Well, to balance the seasonality. You know, you have a strong winter season, summer and fall can be kind of weak for us from an economic standpoint. More shops and restaurants downtown. To package, define, and promote the city as a tourism destination. And then the next question, how would you describe Punta Gorda as a retirement or relocation destination? People moving here just decided they want to live here. They described it as outstanding, ideal, fabulous, plenty to do, active and engaging, safe and peaceful. Top attributes for relocation: quiet, safe, affordable, clean. The waterfront and outdoor activities are top attributes. What would make it better for people considering to move here? More activities, more pedestrian and bicycle pathways, increased harbor access, better health facilities. Now, I understand now all of these are within the purview of a city, but these are the responses. How would you describe Punta Gorda as a place to open a business? Now, a little schizophrenia here. You may want to notice this. The first answer we have, not the best, good but not business friendly. Business friendly, but mostly for restaurants. Area's demographics may limit potential business. What they meant there was if you look at the age and the incomes of the population, maybe only certain businesses could consider the city. Safe, infrastructure not strained. Smart comment. Top business attributes: safe, good transportation hub, affordable, unique, not cookie cutter, good infrastructure already in place. What can make it better for doing this? A business development master plan, incentives for attracting new business, better skilled trained workforce, a stronger retail center component, better public education. Again, maybe not all within the purview of the city, but those were the answers. Some of the outcomes of the two-day meeting. The group feels that targets for any communication from the city about the city would be potential residents, potential businesses, potential visitors, but also the existing members of those groups. So existing residents and existing businesses as well. So reasons to consider Punta Gorda really run across the gamut, whether people are deciding to come here or to stay here. Some of the outcomes, again, from the group for the 2 days. Here's their big takeaways. Initial thoughts on potential positioning. There were some potential thoughts, my report to you, but really no consensus. There were some ideas, some very good ideas, but the group was concerned about this being only an internal opinion. They did make a pretty profound comment that you'll hear again and again. Change is inevitable. It's how change is handled is going to be up to this community, because change is going to come. And we consider things like communication and branding, those will influence issues like change. Also, when you look at issues like branding and communication, every city is different. You know, a brand developed for Punta Gorda may not be the brand developed for Orlando. What your values are, how you're growing, what you want to be, how you want to sustain yourself, those all become part of your discussion. But it would be important for Punta Gorda to ensure its path versus just growth for growth's sake. The consensus of the group was that the city should move forward with formally defining its brand and communication. So that was the message to you all. Now, what does that take us then? What is community branding? What is it? How it applies to cities? What are the benefits to cities who consider this? Now, let me just define our terms a little bit. We're living in a branding age, all right? So sometimes when we talk branding, people think, well, we're talking about a logo, right? You see a lot of logos there. Logo is a great part of expressing a brand, but that's not a brand. Sometimes people think, well, it's taglines, right? We hear taglines like, just do it, and I'm loving it, and think different. Again, great for expressing a brand and summarizing it, but that's not a brand. Or it could be advertising or public relations or social media. Those, again, great ways to get messages out, but those aren't a brand. Let me define what a brand is. A brand is what you mean to a particular target or audience and why you should be considered. Okay? For all of you that have run for office, you know at one point you had to declare definitively what you are, what you stood for, and why you are different. Very similar situation. That's a brand, very much a brand. So it's what you mean to others, why they should consider you. When we devise brands, there's three main areas we look at. A deep study of place. We have to know what the place is. We have to have the understanding of who we're communicating to, the target, and we have to understand the alternatives for that destination. So let me give you an example. City of Orlando. I mean, does it work for cities? Yeah. I'll give you examples of two cities that have carefully crafted a brand. City of Orlando. Now, when you think of the city of Orlando, you probably think, oh, and there's Vegas. Those are two very different cities, right? Okay, we know that. Think of Orlando, you probably think wholesome, family, fun, right? Whether you're moving there or vacationing there. You think of Vegas, you probably think of constructing a good alibi, right? Very studied, they did it on purpose. They constructed their own brand and what they want to represent themselves as to the world. Now, how does this apply to cities? Well, cities are able to construct their own image, their own messages, and define themselves in what is becoming a very crowded, very communicated world. And when they do, they're able to control their destiny more, whether that's economic issues, growth issues. They're able to have a better control over who and what they are, who they attract, who they retain. Some of the considerations and converging factors that cities are considering right now that are taking up branding issues, but looking at the national economy. I don't have to tell you the economy is down. You know, home ownership's down, employment's down, we've had anemic growth. We've had threats to visitation here in Florida that really affect all of us. We heard about Zika this morning, but whoever thought we'd be looking at gator attacks at Disney World, green algae, terrorist attacks in Orlando, these affect image, and it affects everyone in the state. So cities are aware of this, and they're looking at downturns in the economy, they're looking at images or issues of that could affect their own images. Other thing that cities are looking at now too is we've come to the end of the baby boomer relocation era, okay? With cities that have fed really well, done really well for those people in the baby boomer era are really having to come to grips with. In 2015, there was a major shift. The group that we call now the millennials are taking over. So communities that have grown or sustained themselves with those from the baby boomer generation are now going to have to look at something else in the future, because we're looking at a different population set that's moving forward, a different population set that communicates differently, has different values, and has different aspirations of who they are and where they want to live. The other converging factors they're looking at too is that other cities are rapidly engaging the process. This is what cities are doing to set themselves apart. In a sense, competing with each other, but in a sense also making sure that they control their own destiny. Now, one of the things I want to point it out, I pointed out to our group when we were talking over the last 2 days, my company has seen tremendous growth in this sort of branding communication taking place over on the east coast of Florida. It is a virtual bloodbath. The cities over there are fighting tooth and nail to define who they are, define themselves as distinctively different. This has come over to the west coast. The city of Dunedin has just done it. The city of Clearwater has just done it. The city of St. Petersburg has just done it. But now you're facing it now with the adjacent communities. Okay, Northport did it a few years ago. You have Babcock Ranch coming out of the ground, really. That's not going to be a bedroom community for you. That's going to be a whole town. They're going to have jobs. They're going to have recreation. They're going to have everything right out there. And if you've paid attention to the news lately, Fort Myers, they are now currently in the process of considering rebranding. Okay? The other thing is, and Laura pointed this out this morning, and Kathy, I apologize, you didn't realize your picture was going to be up there, so. But other entities in your community are defining your community, and this is not a bad thing necessarily, okay? They're out there, they're doing their job, they're saying who and what they are, but they're also having to say who and what Punta Gorda is, okay? So there you have plenty of voices out there, but you're not doing that, they are doing that, okay? So it's just a matter of control for you. It doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing, but it's sort of like you're driving down the road and, you know, your hands are off the wheel right now. The other thing that we, again, want to talk about is that, you know, the question is really going to be whether or not the city is going to want to manage change. We know that change is going to occur. Is it going to choose its own direction, or is it going to allow those other forces and other voices kind of decide things for it? Also, we have to remember, too, that not to make a decision, to just let it go, that's a decision in and of itself as well. All right, so what may be needed? Let's talk a little bit about what a city would do and what the steps we might take. What may be needed for Punta Gorda to do is to accurately define itself vis-a-vis alternatives, determine how the community should be perceived, and why the city should be embraced. This involves devising an accurate, unique, engaging community brand, and then communicating it consistently and universally onward into the future. Here's how it's done. There's two components when we devise brand. There's really a component of an inward look and an outward look. Now, these depend on an understanding of the place, as we talked about earlier, those who we might be talking to, who might encounter the brand, and those who might, or things that might be alternatives for our city. I won't go through all the steps here, but a real studied look from the internal standpoint involves processes that allow us to really understand the history of the city, the values of the city, the attributes of the city, why it would be selected. It also involves the constituency, those in the city that have a stake in the vitality of the city and the maintenance of the city and sustainability of the city to have a voice, okay? Not to necessarily say this is what it is, but they need to have a voice and they need to provide input and guidance to that. The external involves studies that really allow those devising the brand to have a very objective view of the city through such things as looking at the history of the city through research or conducting new market research. Pretty vital to understand how people view the city from the outside by conducting that research. So we've determined through that research what are the existing views and beliefs about the community, the reasons for relocation or retention of the community, and our perceived view and beliefs about alternatives to the community. Then we enter into brand development. From that, there's the devised brand strategy and the development of potential communication expressions. But then again, those should be tested. It's a great thing to come up with this, but it's better for those that to get input and research from those who may be making a profile of those who may be making a decision about the community and see how they react to the new brand. And then again, outcome review by stakeholders, significant stakeholders. Then on execution, the fourth and final step, there'd be creation of pilot messages and a brand standards manual. So this is done, and you know what it is, and you can pull it off the shelf. If we all go down on the same plane together to the Caribbean, someone can come along and say, this is what Punta Gorda said, this is right here. It's not a graphic standard, so the graphic standards will be in there, but how it was derived, what the city stands for, its place in the world. Also a brand plan for application and use. Okay, now we got it. Now how are we going to apply it? What are we going to do with it? And also the development of how do we develop a community brand culture? In other words, how do we get everyone within the city to embrace it, to understand it, to reflect it, to disseminate it? And also, really important, the external marketing communications plan development has to come out of this as well. So you've got a brand, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to communicate it? Written down and understood. Now, what are some of the anticipated outcomes of a process like this, if any city decides to do this? Well, you should have a distinct brand and a plan for your communication. You should have a community-wide understanding and embrace of the city's meaning and the brand. You should have community engagement in implementing the brand and the brand communication. And you should have a clear definition of the city to the outside world. Now, those are the features, but what are the benefits? The community controls and achieves its own goals and objectives for community development through a clear plan for communicating what the city is, more efficient and effective communication. Let me explain that, because someone asked me about that this morning. How's it more efficient? You set out to do anything on part of a community, I don't care if it's what you're going to paint your trucks, or the new brochure that's going to come out, or the mayor's got to go talk in a foreign city. You've got half your work done. No one has to sit back and say, what do we say? What do we do? Who are we? Where are we going? What's the path? It's already defined. So there's a tremendous amount of efficiency and reduction of long-term cost over time. Assuring better selection by those considering the city, okay? If we have people on the outside, whether it's to bring a business here or to move here, we have a better assurance that we're going to be the choice. And the city actively managing change and choosing its own direction, big part. It's a big reason why cities do this, as opposed to allowing others or external forces or just inertia to control the city's destiny. And let me just make a couple final conclusions. You know, I think those of us from the outside of Punta Gorda really believe that Punta Gorda is a model of resiliency. You know, since 2004, Hurricane Charlie, this community's come together. They've made a direction. They haven't just sat down. The city has taken a real proactive stance in moving forward. So this isn't a city that just sits still and just accepts fate. The other thing, this may be the next step. I think as the city looks at moving forward since 2004, this may be a very important next step for the city to continue to define itself and to control its fate in controlling its image and its communication. Now, I was asked to supply talking points, so I can leave these up here or wherever you would like to have this, but if there's any questions about what we said and what the top line points were, they'll be right here. But if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer those as well.
I guess I'll start. I don't really have questions because I think I pretty much understand. The only one thing I would like you to clarify a little bit more of the alternatives. Are you
Right.
saying like alternatives from this place, like another place, or what are the alternatives?
Typically, in community branding, it would be other places or other communities. It could be any alternative, though. When we look at the people that we might be talking to or communicating with, whether it's potential residents or potential businesses, the alternative could be another community, or it could be some other alternative. You know, they have to make a decision to go or not to go. A decision not to go could be made by any number of reasons. It may not necessarily mean that they've chosen another community, but it could be something that bars the choice of your community.
Okay. I definitely think this is the next step because just from my time up here, 6 years, you know, I've been involved in a lot of different things and it does get frustrating sometimes, like when we did the 125th anniversary for the city of Punta Gorda. Like, we needed a logo. I mean, we needed something to say, this is what this is and this is what we're doing. So luckily, we had volunteers that helped us take the hibiscus logo and put the 125th banner, and we, you know, it worked. But did we struggle? Yes. Were we kind of frustrated? Yes. I mean, to know that if we go down this road and then we have a road in front of us, I think it'll just make things in that instance easier. You know, we're coming up on 130 years now. Are we going to do something for that? Lisa's saying no. But we have so much history that I feel like that's all tied into this as well, that needs to be a part of it and woven into it so that when we're gone, you know, the city still has that direction. So I think in a lot of that you went through, the, you know, community behind you, we already have those pieces. So I really like this idea. Kim?
I think this is 100% where we need to go. And I want to thank you, Donna. You kind of pulled it all together. We've been working on this, a lot of us, for 4 years now. and you being here has really, you know, along with Laura and Dave, really brought it together. Thank you for all of that.
Yes, thank you.
I think another important thing, just from sitting up here and listening over the last 4 years to different people, oh, we want to make this a park, and we want to do this, and we don't want taller buildings, we want lower buildings. Those are all part of our branding and who we are. And I think it's not just sending out a message, a marketing message, it's also what kind of community are we going to be. So I think that this is very important for us right now. So I'm 100% in favor.
Nancy?
Yeah, I think this is, having participated in this, the OCOM from the very beginning, I think it's taken OCOM to a whole new level. And I think Patty said it, and I feel like it's really a rebirth to OCOM that involves many more constituents. And I think it's excellent. And it's just, it feels right, and I think it's the perfect next step. Thank you, Donna and Dave and Laura and the whole team.
I think all the positive things that we're talking about here are right on and on the money. But I also think it's just as important, and it's a message that I'm reading in this. This is also, it's a way for us to make sure we don't become who we don't want to become. And that's just as important as what we want to portray out there. To me, I think it's spot on. And again, thank you, Donna. It's been fun working with you the little bit that I have. And we're very fortunate we have people like you that step up in this community. That is part of who we are as a brand, is just a lot of really good people that step up.
Again, thank you, and I'm anxious to see what the next steps are and where it takes us. I think it'll be an exciting journey.
Well, the next step,
Money.
There's pragmatic Howard coming in.
Okay, Mr. Moneybags?
we have consensus that we can put an RFP together, request for proposal, put it out on the street. There's a lot of companies that do this.
Yep.
Yep.
We get emails from them all the time. And start a process to receive proposals, interview them if we need to, bring back to you a recommendation, a ranking, and then with some dollars as to what it would cost, and you make a final call.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's all we need.
We'll have this ready for the next
Beautiful.
council meeting?
No.
RFPs. We gotta write the RFP.
I know.
The RFP. I'll probably be sitting out there.
Okay,
But I'm
I feel like we owe Dave lunch at this point, so thanks for sticking around, Dave. We really couldn't shuffle the meeting around too much today, so thanks for sticking in there, everybody who came to support this item. Okay, recommendation from city officers. Howard?
I have two comments. One is a correction. An article in the Charlotte Sun stated that the Ponce Park redesign contract or design contract was going to be on the August 31st council meeting. No, it'll be on the September 7th council meeting.
Okay.
And Jerry Priscilla would like a letter of support or a reference, support reference. He would like to apply to establish a farmer's market on Boca Grande. Got to go through Lee County. And I'd like your okay to fill out the reference survey of support.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
That's all I need.
City attorney, we'll let him come back. City clerk? Oh, you're up.
I'm up. Nothing, thank you.
City clerk?
Thank you. We are having announcements, vacancies on the Board of Zoning Appeals, Code Enforcement Board, Planning Commission, and Utility Advisory Board.
So there are great opportunities out there for you to apply for some of our boards and committees. Now would be the time. And we have no nominations or appointments. Policy and legislation. I will just give a brief update of the Florida League of Cities Conference. it was a little different than most years. The hotel was under a complete renovation, meaning that there was no lobby. And it's the Hollywood Diplomat Hotel, which was a Westin property, which was gorgeous and very modern. So what it's gonna be like now, I have no idea. It's turned into a Hilton, so it was a little challenging.
I'll just say the rooms were wonderful, if that's any indication
Yeah,
of
the
what it's
new
gonna be
rooms are
like.
real modern and real cool. But it was challenging with the hotel under that dramatic of a renovation. So we did survive. And I was on the nominating committee, so I supported Mr. Leo Longworth from the city of Bartow for the second vice president, and he won the election, so he's now the second vice president of the Florida League of Cities. He's been a city commissioner in Bartow for 20 years. Yes, yep. And the small world is my sister lives in Polk County, and she's an accountant, and she's their accountant up there in Bartow, so that was pretty neat. The best speaker was Buddy Dyer. When he spoke about the experiences in Orlando following the tragedy there, and it was a very nice, very good speech. It was, one that we all needed to hear. So, other than that, it was back to Orlando next time, and hopefully the hotel's intact.
A few years ago, when we had the League of Cities in Jacksonville, the hotel caught fire, so.
Oh, geez, we did have a fire alarm go off, but they did not make us evacuate the building, but, yeah, okay, so it wasn't that bad.
Correct.
So that's all I have. Council member comments, Nancy?
Yeah, as far as the League of Cities, I thought it was a different conference because it didn't seem to have a strong theme like other ones have had in the past. So it was kind of like a miscellaneous conference. But yeah, the hotel was a real distraction. And hopefully in 2 years that'll be fixed. And
They said November, I'm like,
they said that actually in a few weeks the lobby would be opening, and there are going to be 4 new restaurants, 2 of which are going to be run by the guy on the Food Channel that is the MC for the show Chopped, the gray-haired guy with the black glasses. He's going to have 2 restaurants there. So, but and it was really strange, but anyway, glad to be back from our break, and onward and forward.
yeah, 3 weeks in a row, so come back every Wednesday.
So while you guys were all out having a good time and partying, I attended a meeting here for Chenep where we were finished the interviewing process for Lisa's replacement. We came up with 3 very strong candidates out of pared that down from 6 to 3, ranked them, and John is in the process of negotiating in that order, and I think shortly we'll have a very strong, who has a very high bar to go, because Lisa has done just an outstanding job, but she's decided to move on, and so we're going to be in good hands.
Thank you.
Very good.
Tom?
Nothing, thank you.
Kim?
I just want to say, I was able to attend a lady's May Dial's 100th birthday, and I have to tell you, it was such a good time. So thanks for being out of town, right? I've never been to one before.
That was cute. I like that the place where she lived reached out. I thought that was really
Oh.
neat.
Yeah,
That
it
was very
awesome.
nice. Okay,
That's it.
citizens' comments, any topic, please come to the podium, state your name. You have 3 minutes.
You were out there, Fabian.
Karen Turnbull, property owner and resident of Punta Gorda Isles since 1991. Thank you for your support of the Peace River Wildlife Center and for all the work which I've learned today since it's 1 o'clock, that all the time, energy, and work you put into making this a great place to live. Property owners with 40 feet of seawall in PGI and Birchstore Isles paid $13.75 per foot for their seawall maintenance fee. Property owners with 80 feet of seawall paid $6.88 for their seawall maintenance fee. Property owners with 120 feet of seawall paid $4.58 for their seawall maintenance fee. Property owners with 200 feet of seawall paid $2.75 per foot for their seawall maintenance fee. Property owners who own 2 lots for a combination of 120 feet of seawall paid $9.16 per foot for seawall maintenance, even though property owners with 1 lot and the same amount of seawall footage paid half that amount. This has been going on for years. Our seawall fee was $250 for many, many years and then jumped. It's going to continue to jump. Costs are going to continue to increase. As this increases, the inequity between what is being paid per foot will continue to grow. The gap will grow. It's in the best interest of not only property owners, but also the city to correct this flawed methodology now. We are asking that you step up to the plate, correct this flawed methodology, come up with a resolution, very simple solution. Canal maintenance fees will be assessed per foot of seawall. Very simple. Easily calculated. The property appraiser's office has all of this data, number of feet of seawall per lot, already in the database. It would be a one-time job to make these calculations. For the rest of eternity, those seawall lengths are going to be the same per lot. So it'd only be a one-time investment of time and resources to make the change. This problem is not going away. As I've heard from everybody, and as you know, you have spent hours and hours and hours on emails and comments and calls from property owners stating that it is not fair for property owners with less seawall to be paying more per foot than property owners with more seawall. It's even more offensive that this ends up being those with less pay more than those with more. And finally, in terms of, and thank you for this time, in terms of what was just said about branding Punta Gorda, its waterfront is a huge part of it. Affordability came up repeatedly. People that can afford smaller waterfront footage don't need to be paying twice as much as a neighboring person with more footage. Basically, they're going to be driven out of PGI. And it, as again, something that makes this problem even worse is that each time fees are raised, this gap is increased.
Thank you.
So please help me know what needs to happen next. I hope that a class action lawsuit is not needed for you all to correct this problem.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Come to the podium, please. Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, we are adjourned.